All right. Well, welcome everyone. Thanks for joining. I'm Steve Whiteside with Research Pathfinder, and I'm excited to introduce our CEO. Alexis is a rheumatologist, epidemiologist, and academic research leader. Her work focuses on improving outcomes for people living with inflammatory arthritis through rigorous clinical research, data science, and innovative study design. She founded Research Pathfinder to help researchers efficiently access the expertise they need to accelerate high-quality science. Some quick housekeeping on the Q&A with Teams. Please use the Teams Q&A feature. It's at the top of the screen. And drop your questions in there anytime during the presentation. We'll collect them as we go. I'll read them out loud at the end, and Alexis will answer them. Or if you'd rather ask live, raise your hand, and we'll bring you on camera and enable your mic. Or if you want to email the question to me, feel free, and I'll read them as well. So, Alexis, it's all yours.
All right, thank you. And can everybody see you can see my screen okay? Okay. I'm gonna have to minimize my camera, so Steve, you just read out any questions that come up. So, all right. Well, one of the things that we've been thinking a lot about is how to navigate this uncertainty in research right now. And as a research leader right now, I deal with this on an everyday basis. So I have also been taking part in this leadership program, a national leadership program, to help us kind of think about different concepts that we can apply. So I'm going to distill some of those lessons down here and talk about them today. So about a year, like in 2024, none of this was as much of a concern because we had the NIH that was working steadily and our partnerships with the industry were pretty seamless. But in late January, early February 2025, the NIH was frozen. And then there were a number of grant terminations. There was lots of different programs that were disrupted, including DEI programs. There started to be new requirements for certifying that grants were able to be delivered. And then in the summer, there's this new program called Forward Funding, where all the years of a grant were funded up front. That decreased the number of total grants that could be funded through the NIH. And other universities or groups had funding taken away. So this lack of funding or operating in a new environment where there's lots of constraints is relatively new to us in academics. I think other groups have dealt with this before, but it's been a major change in academics. And this is important because the way we do things generally in science is that we hire a whole team of people to do studies, and then they have multiple grants that they're covering or multiple different projects that they're working on. But if you overall diminish the total number of grants, then you still have to support the team in some way and get the work done. There's also been major hits to healthcare coverage. There's a threat of Medicare ending and parts of the Affordable Care Act ending. So this is decreasing the amount of spending that can occur for healthcare, and it's really healthcare margins from large healthcare organizations that then fund the kind of infrastructure for research. And so with decreasing margins on the healthcare side, we get seeing less coming back to research. So academic institutions in general have really been hit in different ways than they've experienced before. And this is also affecting big pharma in different ways. And then biotech, this is kind of the life that biotech leads a lot of times, trying to get things done under resource constraints. But if you take the broader view of what's been going on, we're in really truly unprecedented times. So there's this concept of the scale from uncertainty all the way to chaos. And the concept is that you can have some uncertainty, there can be some challenging times, then there could be a crisis. COVID was a crisis. And you have a dual crisis. So that's things like George Floyd plus COVID. And then you start adding more things on, and then we have a polycrisis. So there's many different, if you're trying to play whack-a-mole to try to get a hold of all the different crises, then everybody's experiencing some sort of uncertainty because there's multiple different things happening. Then we get into unprecedented times, so we are there. What we don't want to tip over into is outrage and true chaos. So the idea is to think about how we can manage things in this polycrisis and unprecedented times. So there's no doubt that we are in a time of complete structural change. There's funding turbulence that I talked about. There's a lot of emotional fatigue. So if you're not sure what's going to happen with your job, or you're trying to figure out how you're going to make ends meet, or if you're just trying to figure out you've built this whole career and now the funding isn't coming in the way it's supposed to, it's really exhausting. And you're also trying to manage a team that you care about and you want to continue to support as well. In addition to that, there's a lot of strain on the healthcare system. And we talked about how healthcare costs or healthcare margins are actually what support a lot of research infrastructure. Healthcare costs are continuing to rise, which decreases those margins even further. Then you have AI disruption. So this really truly creates structural change in that everything around us is changing and it's accelerating so fast. What we knew about AI 6 months ago is so different than what we know about AI today. And while all of this chaos is going on around us, the expectations are still essentially the same. So I think some groups are starting to think about what it means to be promoted in a different way than they have before. But if resources are diminishing, but expectations are staying the same, it really feels difficult. And this is where managing a team can be particularly challenging right now. And what we do see is that uncertainty isn't just a temporary interruption, it's really a landscape shift. Why is this? Well, it may be 4 years of a set of policies going to affect the NIH and the FDA and other organizations that really fund a bulk of research in the United States. But it's not just the 4 years, it's the change in who we're bringing into research. So being able to support young investigators as they come in. And then long term, how is that going to play out if we end up in a dip without enough investigators in a few years because we've lost investigators in this time or lost scientists? Then we're going to be in a much worse place. So somehow we need to figure out how to navigate this new interruption and make it to the other side. I love this quote from Jerry Garcia. Somebody has to do something. It's just incredibly pathetic that it has to be us. So, and I think that is where we are today. There's no one savior in all of this. It's all of us trying to figure out on the ground how we're going to make it work and how we're going to keep moving forward. So this is our call to adventure. And so some of the things I'll talk about today are just how we get accepting that adventure and how are we going to be applying it to keep our teams moving forward. I like this quote too. Leadership isn't about navigating, it isn't about preventing storms. It's about navigating them. And we are certainly in a storm now. So what does it mean to accept our call to action? Well, I think first of all, we have to just understand what's going on in the environment around us. And there's so many things happening on a regular basis that it's hard to log all of those. But I think there have been certain things put out by the federal government in particular about what they hope to see. So MAHA, or Make America Healthy Again, is the Trump administration's plan for how they want to see science unfold over the next 4 years. So the first is they have this more gold standard and independent research. So they don't want less research is what they say in their policies. They want more gold standard research. And I think this is actually mostly the way that we've all learned to do research, rigorous research and testing hypotheses, et cetera. There's a whole document on what is gold standard research. It's really the things that we already do. I think it's about communicating how we're doing that research. Next is policy and regulatory reform. I think many of us would be happy to see some more regulatory reform, especially around FDA approvals and getting drugs through the FDA. We haven't seen much in terms of that happening yet, but hopefully we will see some of the policy and regulatory reforms to decrease the amount of extra paperwork. Approximately 44% of a scientist's daily job is navigating some kind of policy, regulatory, or administrative burden. Reduction of harmful exposures, promotion of whole foods and physical activity, and then reevaluation of current medical practices affecting children. So the first two were more about how we do science. The three are some of the key things that they would like to see out of the science. So some of the key concerns behind MAHA were poor diet and ultra-processed food dependence. The second was environmental and chemical exposures. Third was low physical activity and sleep issues and stress. And four was over-medicalization and prescription overuse. So these are some of the themes that run through MAHA. Now, if we look at what is kind of in somewhere of the details about advancing research, it's looking at chronic disease and whole population healthcare. So actually, some of the people see on the call, this is kind of what we do already. Real world data platforms, linking claims, EHRs, and wearables. Again, many of us do this already. New approaches and methodologies, including organoids, modeling, and AI. research on vaccines, autism, air and water quality, microplastics, nutrition, microbiome, gut health, sleep, metabolic health, mental health, and then longitudinal cohort integration and clinical trials strengthening. So a lot of this work is stuff that's already going on. And then regulatory and structural reforms, this is just a list of some of the things that they had proposed that they want to do, including updating the dietary guidelines, which has happened, strengthening conflict of interest disclosures in science and medicine, some of the restructuring of HHS, some of which we've started to see. AI integration is something that comes up over and over in their plan. Private sector collaboration. So they list these couple themes, but I'll just say overall, the concept of having more academic, private sector, government collaboration is a part of what has been discussed in some of these documents as well. And then among the NIH, they've listed a series of priorities. I won't go through all of these. The NIH director has a page in which he has all of these things outlined here. But one of the nice things about this, again, is that there's some overarching themes such as building national research infrastructure, broadening access to advanced computational tools, artificial intelligence. So there's lots of pieces that go across different disciplines. So I think the idea here is that research, they still aim to support research and maybe in these areas, but you can kind of put lots of things into these different areas. So my reframe is that the current administration wants us to tackle meaningful problems. And this is something that I've had the opportunity to hear Bhattacharya in a smaller group conversation. This is something he really underscored, is that we need to tackle meaningful problems that affect people living their real world daily life, and then focus on developing solutions that will improve their lives on a daily basis. And then we need to show how we're improving their lives. And so one of the things that he talked about, and I'm going to come back to this, is how we tell the story of what we're doing with our science. And that's part of this leadership journey too. Okay, so that's the background of where we are today. So where are we going though, and how are we going to navigate this uncertainty that we're walking through? So I think one of the things that I've seen in my own groups is that people start to read some of these different things that have been put out by MAHA or NIH, and they get very they start to feel constraints all around them. And so then they start to think about just the one thing. But I think what we need to think about is expanding our vision and being more expansive about how we think about the future of medicine, and then letting that drive us forward. And I'll tell you more about that. So I think our adventure that we're about to embark on is, as a community, harnessing rigorous science, powerful data, responsible AI, collaborative leadership to improve health, translate discovery into action, strengthen trust and equity, and shape the future of healthcare for patients, communities, and populations. And so I think most of us can ascribe to this. I think the collaborative part is one of the opportunities that we really have to build, that we've all been in our own silos for a very long time. Some of this kind of mixing and uncertainty is maybe hopefully going to pull us out of our silos to allow more connections across groups. So what do we need in our backpacks as we get ready for this adventure? So I'm going to go through 10 different kind of overall leadership concepts that we'll kind of dive into a little bit. And I think these are the kinds of things that we need to put in our backpack. So one is honing leadership skills. I was just at a leadership meeting this past weekend, and one of the things that someone brought up is that within academics in particular, people get promoted based on their science, not necessarily based on their leadership skills, which is a little bit unfortunate. So hopefully, though, this uncertainty and having to navigate teams in a different way through a difficult environment is going to help some of these leaders know that they need more leadership skills. So even those of us who have done a lot of leadership training, there's some new things that we can learn about how to navigate difficult environments. This VUCA leadership framework was something developed by the Army, so it kind of makes sense. The Army in a battlefield is trying to think about how to deal with uncertainty all the time. So one of the things that they break this down into is 4 principles: volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity. So within volatility, we want to think about it's a rapid, unpredictable, and changing environment. So we need to be used to that and ready for that, and already putting that into our frame of reference. Next is the uncertainty. So a lack of predictability or lack of clear information. Complexity. I think we are absolutely in a super complex environment right now. There's many complex interconnected factors, and there's a really difficult cause and effect. There's difficult cause effect clarity. So we don't necessarily know sometimes if one thing is causing another. We just know that they're connected in one way or another. And then ambiguity. There's unclear meaning even when information exists. So one of the nice things about this VUCA framework is it emphasizes a strategic foresight, adaptability, resilience, and then sense making as essential leadership qualities. And I think more than anything now, we've learned that adaptability is really key. So, and I think we learned that in COVID to some degree too. We need to anticipate emerging issues. Then we have to understand the consequences of those emerging issues. We have to recognize relationships between variables. I think that's something that we sometimes skip over and maybe need to spend some more time on. We need to prepare for multiple scenarios and then identify and act on opportunities. So one of the questions that someone brought up recently, or a new way of kind of doing some of these strategy meetings, is to say, what is going to go wrong and how will we deal with that? So instead of thinking about a strategy and then the ultimate goals, but step back and have a whole meeting to discuss where are all the areas that this is going to fail and what are we going to do when it fails? So that kind of gets to this prepare for multiple scenarios and identify and act on opportunities. If you've had the pre-mortem before you have to have a post-mortem, you already know how to identify those things as they come up, and you can be more adaptable. So what are the key leadership implications? Is learning from failure. So you're going to predict those failures before they happen and learn from the failures before they happen, but as they're happening and afterwards. So you have the pre-mortem and the post-mortem. Build readiness and resilience. So recognize that things aren't going to go the way that we anticipate every time. There's going to be another curveball that comes in. And how do we ready ourselves for that, and how are we resilient when they come through? Improve knowledge management and decision processes. So if there's any time to get more efficient, now is the time to get more efficient, and how knowledge comes in. And can you create, ways for knowledge to travel up and down? And then addressing both systemic and human and behavioral weaknesses. So if there's a gap in the chain, find that gap, try to fill that gap. Understand broader social, political, economic, and technical context. This is actually also particularly important right now because there's all kinds of things going on socially and politically. There's economic aspects of what's happening. And then technical is huge. There's just constant technical transformation right now. There's other adaptations of this, so not to go into too much detail, but other words that kind of resonate in the same vibe are vision, understanding, courage, and adaptability, or vision, understanding, clarity, and agility. So all words that are really relevant for navigating uncertainty. Okay, so that's leading and the leadership skills that we have to be ready to develop. Next are rejecting the fear of constraints. So I think anytime there's a budget cut or there's some new constraint, maybe not enough grant funding, we sometimes get wrapped up in that constraint. And when you start to get wrapped up in the constraint, you fear that it's going to take away freedom, reduce options. Maybe it'll expose what we're not able to do, and it's going to force trade-offs that we don't want to fix or don't want to face. The problem with the constraints is that if you have too many constraints and you just focus on what you can't do, it really diminishes creativity. So from there, you have less ability to kind of navigate because you're not able to take in new information as easily. You're not as easily able to think of new solutions as they come along. So, or see opportunities as they come along. So rejecting the fear of constraints is really important. Instead, acknowledge the constraints, grieve what was lost. I was just reading an article on organizational grief. And if anything, we're kind of going through that right now. We have to acknowledge it and grieve it, then move out of fear into design and that strategy portion, and make courageous decisions. And then allow those boundaries to kind of sharpen our purpose rather than shrink it. So think of our same vision, but maybe we're going to do this part first and continue the rest once we've accomplished this part. Maybe there's something that about the where we're going to need to do it that's going to be slightly differently shaped instead. I love Virginia Woolf's quote, arrange whatever pieces come your way. So that's kind of the same piece of navigating constraints. So again, when navigating constraints or trying to reject the fear of constraints, we want to be focused on what needs to get accomplished, align with the groups that need alignment. If we have only so many resources, we're going to have to bring two groups together, align them, and coalesce our resources. Think creatively about how things can be done, and then make sure that there's a coherent movement forward. Along with rejecting the fear of constraints, we also have to reject the fear of failure. Fear of failure, we already know, kills innovation. This is kind of a widespread thing within startups or within other creative businesses. One of my favorite books that I've read for like leadership stuff is called Orbiting the Giant Hairball. And the idea is if you constantly let things turn and you don't get too afraid of something, you can either spin off or you can get sucked into the hairball. And so you want to continually spin around without getting too stuck on what happens if I fail. And the other concept is kind of like holding something lightly and being able to turn it around. And failure is part of the process, but not getting too anchored on failure. So create cultures where negative results are valued, replication is okay, and risk-taking is intellectually respected. Make failure a normal part of the process. In our research day-to-day teams, I think that looks different depending on the type of research you do. Obviously, if you run a very large mouse experiment and it fails, it's really, really expensive. So that's probably not something you want to do, but starting small and failing early may be helpful there. In our clinical research world, we may have really large projects that we put in, pull large data sets with. And so if we fail, we have to just be okay with some negative results and think about what else we can learn from the data if we dig in a different way. But also when you're starting new programs, especially as we're creating new efficiencies and trying to figure out how to work more efficiently within our teams, sometimes things aren't going to work. And so having a fast feedback cycle where you can say, okay, we're going to try this new process, and then let's get feedback early to see if it's working or what the hiccups are. Then we'll revise and go again. And not seeing it necessarily as failure, but continual implementation changes to make it what it needs to be. Next is embracing and leading AI. So I think AI scares some people. Other people have dove right in right from the very beginning. So the more you use AI, especially the easier platforms like ChatGPT or Claude or Grok, all these different platforms, use a couple, play with them. You really have to get good at prompt engineering because that will help you. But there are so many things you can do every day to make your day-to-day life more efficient, or day-to-day work life more efficient at the very least. I don't see this taking jobs from anyone in the scientific sphere anytime soon, but it can certainly make us much more efficient at what we're doing. And so it can just take some of those burdens away. Look for any of those administrative tasks that you can take off your list. Sometimes that's just summarizing meeting notes or rewriting a policy document or something like that. Know that anything you put in, if you don't have your account, is going straight into the web so that it can be used to train the model. So having your own account protects you from that. If you have an institutional license behind the firewall, that's even better for sticking grants or any sensitive research information in. Do that behind the firewall. Never put patient information in unless your institution is okay with that or has a policy on that. So look for that. But keep getting better at it, because if we don't start now, we're already so much farther ahead 6 months than 6 months ago. In another 6 months, we're going to be way past that. So get used to it now and keep learning. There's lots of different tools out there to learn how to use these tools. And there are so many tools, as I've mentioned. So I'm gonna show you one that's just another cool little fun one that you can use, StoryBrand AI. But there's a variety of different AI tools out there. Sora is for images. Just about all the images in this presentation were AI generated. And it's just so much fun to play with. Okay, next is telling the stories. As a leader, you have to be really good at telling stories and kind of making things understandable, accessible, and interesting for your teams, but also for the people above you. So if you are reporting up, you need to be able to tell the story of the important work that your team is doing and how you're adding value to the larger landscape. This is also true for telling the stories of our scientific work to the public. And I think that is one of the key things that we've learned from this last year, is that the public needs to know more about what we are doing and why scientific research is important. And you have to make it relevant to them in their everyday lives. This is really hard for us as scientists to do because we just never learn this skill. So, as you know, I'm going to give you a couple different tools to think about. I've actually done some coaching on how to tell stories early on because I was just not a natural storyteller at all. So I needed to get some of this in order to even help with just writing grants and then also telling stories and presentations. The first presentation I ever gave was the most boring set of slides on just tables of data because it was interesting to me and I thought that's what you're supposed to do when you gave a talk, but not at all. Most scientific presentations should actually not have should not be chock full of data. They should be telling the story of the problem, how you thought about the problem, how something maybe changed the way you thought about the problem, how you addressed the problem, what you learned from that, and then how you are applying that to the real world. So that shape is called the hero's journey. And this, any movie you see, anything, any good book, all follows the hero's journey. There are very few either movies or books that actually don't follow this in some way or another. There may be some little twists and turns, but essentially all the top ones follow this. And what this is you have someone, you or in marketing, it's the customer. In our case of talking about scientific research, the public, it's the individual with the condition in the public or the caregiver of that individual. So you start with them. There's something that then happens so that they have to take on a new mission. So for us, maybe as a scientist, it was if you were exposed to some interesting patient in the hospital and you said, I really want to know more about that. And you decide to take on a new adventure in order to confront that or help that situation in some way. You then encounter a bunch of challenges and temptations to give the journey up. Then there's some kind of revelation that happens. Often that's through a helper or through someone who's going to help you learn a guide of some sort. And then there's some transformation that takes place. There's atonement or coming to grit and kind of coming to the reality that you've had these struggles, that you've been through this transformation, and then returning home. So there's a couple of different ways to think about this. And actually, one of the cool AI tools that was developed is this StoryBrand AI tool. I have no stock in this. We just have been playing with this and having a lot of fun with it. So I want to show this to you too. So you can use, this is built for marketers, but actually it's kind of interesting from a scientific point of view too. So when you go in here, you can create something about your company, but in this case, it could be just your research program. And then it can create all kinds of different things for you if you tell, what you wanted to create. So if you look at what it is doing, so if you actually ask ChatGPT, what is the StoryBrand framework? Also, there's a book that actually gives you this framework. The book is worth reading too, because it's actually a great kind of easy read. But this is also kind of a leadership framework in some ways. So what is a framework? You start with a character. So again, in the framing of StoryBrand, it's really about marketing. So the customer is a hero and they want something specific. They have a problem that they face. It could be an external problem, an internal problem, or a philosophical problem. And in the book, he talks about how really the ideal problem is a combination of all three. And then they meet a guide. So that's your research, your grant idea. If you're writing for, you're applying this in a grant, you show empathy. So I understand this struggle. I've been through this, in my research. We've already done this type of work. We've seen these patients who've experienced this. You show authority. We have the credibility to do this. We have proof that we've done this before. Who gives them a plan? So you give them a plan. There's a simple step-by-step, and let me underscore simple step-by-step process to get to reducing the risk or helping build confidence. And then there's a call to action. So if it's, a direct call to action, it's like buy, enroll, schedule. That's the marketing piece. But there could be a transitional one, like learn more, webinar, fund my grant, and then we'll get there. So, and then you help them avoid failure. So you paint the stakes. What happens if you don't act? What happens if we don't do this research? What would have happened if we didn't do this research? And then end with success. Show the transformed life, what it means to be successful, what success looks like, and how things get better for patients or for the group that you're talking to. I really like this framework. And actually, if you have a grant idea and you want to, if you're, since I'm talking to scientists or any kind of idea you want to share with somebody else, if you put in like a little paragraph into ChatGPT and you say, can you put this into a story brand framework? It will spit out something like this and like give you your guide. So you don't have to buy the software. That's the kind of cheap, but the software does a lot of that for you too. All right. So then we talked about telling stories. One of my mentees, Paras Karmacharya, he has a Rising Researcher Academy. So you can look him up on LinkedIn. There's a lot of resources he has for young investigators. And one of the things that he was saying is someone was asking him, what do I need to do to be successful in 2026? And his response to them was learn how to learn new skills fast. It's just tremendous how much change is happening in the world around us, both from, the social political, but really from a technology standpoint. It's just rapidly changing all the things that we can do. And so you can't learn everything, but what you can learn is how to pick up new skills fast and how to gather those skills in a way that you can put them to action. So defining success in today's world is really about adaptability. So I've highlighted that word there. I have the logs as the image here because one of the things that when I was starting out in my career, everybody always tells you focus, 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 focus. I had one mentor who was Brian Strom is his name, and he was just the chancellor at Rutgers University. He just retired after a very storied career. But he said, unlike the other people, focusing is important, but you have to have lots of logs on the fire. And you never know which of those logs is going to catch fire and which one is not going to catch fire. And so in today's world, we kind of need more logs in the fire because some aren't going to light and some aren't going to provide that warmth that we need, and others are going to be okay. So are going to actually give us the warmth that we need. So adaptability, time to learn new skills, collaboration density is kind of that, what's your network look like? Do you have enough people in your network? Impact trajectory, efficiency and sustainability. If you're gonna have a lot of logs on the fire, they better be pretty tightly managed so you can manage it well. Discipline, and then workforce well-being. I'm gonna come back to that one in a minute. Okay, so we talked about, up in the very beginning that we're being asked to do a lot right now with the same number or fewer resources. So there's just so much more happening. We have to learn all these new skills quickly, and yet we're still using traditional measures of success for promotion in many cases. Hopefully some of your organizations have already started to think about how promotion may happen in a different way, or what is success. So really, I think as a group, as academics and as government and as industry, we all need to be thinking about what is success today? What is impact? What are we doing to have impact? And then how do you measure that? Because grants, papers, prestige, those things may not be good measures of success. And so, especially these days, those measures of success are going to change. So as a group, we just need to be thinking about those and having those conversations in our own groups. So align your incentives with the future that you want. And I think that's something we need to take back to each of our own groups. Number 8, be ruthlessly efficient and fiercely communal. Within Penn, within my institution, we developed a staff sharing platform. The concept was that as people, if you have to get to narrow down your team, we wanted to be able to borrow from other groups in the university in order to support all of our people. That is one way of kind of sharing resources. There's core facilities. This is one of the reasons we built Research Pathfinder, was to be able to be communal with resources and share other people's resources, find other core facilities, and try to share work as much as we can without overburdening the people that are already with us. So if we're shrinking, we don't want to overburden our teams because we want to protect our teams from burnout. Burnout is where we start to lose creativity and lose momentum. So we need to protect from that. And we want to invest in systems. So we want things to be able to move seamlessly and efficiently so that we can be communal. Sometimes it's just hard to find the right people, even within our own institutions. So any ways in which you can make things much more apparent and easier to navigate, can help you be more efficient and communal. Number 9 is increase the importance of self-care. Whenever you're in an uncertain environment, it's really stressful for everybody. It's stressful for the investigators who are worrying about where the funding's coming from and worrying about their teams. It's stressful for the team members, not knowing if they're going to have a position and what's going to happen moving forward. But one of the things that we really want to protect right now is our human capital and our ability to be creative and adapt. So in a time where there's lots going on, and we know that adaptability is one of the most important skills right now, you can't burn out. You have to be able to protect yourself. And the only way to do that is through really good self-care and creating those important boundaries. So this is where, whether it's exercising daily or having a meditation practice, taking care of yourself in whatever way that means, being social, is even more important now than it ever was before. Or any time in a stressful environment, it's just really important. All right, and then finally, number 10, reject this is how we do things here. In a time of change, some groups or some individuals will kind of clamp down and say, no, we're not going to change this. We're going to do it this way. This is the way we've always done it. There's no other time than now where we really need to change how we do things. So if we're truly going to move forward into a new future and adapt all the things that are coming our way, like new AI tools, new systems, new ways of doing things, we have to reject that. This is how we do things here. Often that comes with a sense of protectionism or a fear of constraints. And again, we already said up front, we got to reject the fear of constraints and we got to reject the fear of failure. Now is the time not to do things how we've always done them before, but to adapt new systems and patterns. So to kind of bring all those together, we talked about 10 different concepts for navigating uncertainty. The most important thing is creativity. The work ahead is truly inventive. No one's lived in our shoes has lived through a period exactly like this before, at least. We want to allow for the new possibilities to emerge and new opportunities to emerge. And we want to think about how we design the future. When you kind of throw all the pieces into the air, the nice thing is you can design how you want them to fall when they come back down again. So what are the new models that we want to use? What are some of the new structures or new partnerships we want to think about? What are the new ways we should be training people? How should we be measuring outcomes in the future and what matters? And what are the new ways we can think about to care for each other? I asked ChatGPT to give me a quote about science in the future. And the quote that came through was hope. It was the quote itself is, science is ultimately an act of optimism, a belief that knowledge can make life better. In uncertain times, leaders keep that flame alive. So each of us, our key task ahead is really to keep that flame alive and to make sure that we can provide hope for other people, because those of us that are able to provide hope and keep the flame alive, we're going to keep the trajectory alive and keep creating the future. So with that, before I open for questions, I'll summarize by saying we definitely didn't ask for this moment. None of us, I don't think any of us would have predicted this coming, but we are exactly the leaders that this time requires. Uncertainty is not a signal to retreat. It's an invitation to lead. And let's build the future and build the future that we want to inherit. So with that, I will stop and open for comments, questions, or discussion. And thank you so much to those of you who have joined.
Yes, if you just a reminder, if you have any questions, you can either put them in the Q&A feature, or you can raise your hand and we'll enable your mic and your camera. I did get one from somebody who left, Alexis. It says, we see a lot of job displacement in multiple sectors with AI. Do you think AI will replace a meaningful share of research roles in the next 3 years, or mostly reshape them?
I think mostly reshape them. That's a great question. So if you think about all the different types of tasks that we do, while AI may be able to do some of them, so I think coding, for example, will get a lot easier. I think what that's going to do, though, is reshape the roles of the rest of us. So those of us that don't code as efficiently in Python, let's say, we can easily do that now with ChatGPT and convert a set of code into Python and learn to do that. So it's going to enable new skills. My mentee, Paris, always says, like, it's you to AI, the power of AI. So I think it'll enable many of us to do more things more efficiently. Will that decrease the total number of people in science? I don't think so. And I don't think there's any jobs in particular that I could think of that could be totally replaced. Even if you think about patient navigation, for example, there's so much that we could do in the healthcare space with AI. I still don't think that'll totally replace anybody, though, because you'll still need a lot of those positions because it's not as simple as just programming it all. Patty.
There I go.
Hey,
Hi.
how are you doing? Nice to see
Hi,
you.
how are you? It was a
Good,
really
how are you?
interesting presentation, Alexis. Thank you. And
Thank
a
you.
lot of food for thought. And I don't know how to turn my camera on.
Oh,
But I know it's difficult talking to this anonymous group. But so a lot of this, the two things struck me. One is how relevant this is to writing and trying. Oh, my camera has been enabled. Hi.
hey,
How-
there you are. Nice to see you.
How relevant this is to grant writing, particularly, which is what we all live and die by. What do you do when you get negative results? That's always a challenge too. But I guess what I'd like you to talk a little bit more is collaborative projects and how might, because I know you've got this new effort going, how might that help us collaborate across institutions and maybe avoid some of the barriers that we have at this point to doing so?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I know I think one of the exciting things is the opportunity to collaborate. I love collaborating, as many people know, but I like to learn things from new people. And even before all of this happened, 2025 happened, actually back pre-COVID, I had a program manager go out on or a coordinator go out on maternity leave, and I needed to get some work done. So I went on to Upwork at the time and put my project on there. And I found this project manager who was awesome, and she helped me with that project, but then a couple more. And then I went back and found someone who could help me with creating a newsletter. And again, I went back and forth with that person a few times. And so I was creating a new collaborator through doing those things. So I think where we as Research Pathfinder can help is, first of all, having research people. I mean, I found like a couple people on Upwork. There's just weren't a lot of trained people. But because we in academic institutions and then also in industry work on similar principles, we can I think have people who are cross-trained in both those places and more easily work across the different places. So because we're in the center, uh, you could work with someone who is, and it's all individuals in general, work with someone who's working with a pharmaceutical company for a project. And when they're learning from that process, you can then also work with them on the academic side. And now you're getting some of the knowledge that they've learned through working on that side. And so I think it may help us speak similar languages as well. And then across institutions, one of our hopes for this is that core facilities will have a place to register. And so I have used core facilities outside of my institution before, and I've done that because of word of mouth. I found someone else who had a core that we could utilize. And so by making that connection, I was able to find them and use them. But now this is a way to find those different opportunities. So you don't have to build something in-house. So I think it allows the connections to happen a little more freely. There's really just no other way to find those different connections otherwise. I'm not sure if that answers your question, but
Yeah, I
Sam,
mean, how do you, I mean, I think it's a good answer for finding staff,
yeah.
but how do you think that this might facilitate our ability as investigators to collaborate? Because, you know, like the subcontracting process is
Yeah.
a pain in the neck. And do you have any solutions to that, or can we just work around part of this problem but not the whole thing?
Yeah, that's a great question. For now, I'd say the easiest thing to do is for staff. For investigators, if you go on there as a consultant, you could do that as an extramural kind of like extra consulting for a group. But otherwise, if it's got to come to your institution, we can do that through a PO. So we can take money from one institution, send it to another institution. So there may be ways around that too. I think that's going to be we haven't traversed that yet. So happy to try that with anybody who wants to work on that. But if we can, I would hope that would make it all easier because it's all central. But I think some institutions will be more difficult than others. Sam? Um, I'm not sure. I'm not sure if you're unmuted or if you're able to unmute. Oh. Do you know if Sam is able to unmute? Oh.
Sam should be able to unmute.
Okay, okay. So the chat. All right. Well, if there's no other questions,
Alexis, we
can-
did have one question that was
Okay.
emailed to me from somebody who
great.
left it to 30 minutes. Said, please ask, where do you see constraints hitting us hardest in the next few years? Is it hiring timelines, compliance, budget funding, or a lack of specialized expertise?
All those are great questions. Okay, so I think one is I think for a period of time there will be a decrease in funding. I think then I suspect that over time the funding dollars will come back, but the scalability is going to be hard. And so finding the specialized talent, if we've had to let, get smaller teams, then you kind of rising again and getting the people in that you need is going to be a challenge. And so I hope that's one place that we can help is when you need to flex a little bit with Research Pathfinder. So if you needed staff to fill a gap, you could do that while you're kind of rebuilding or being more flexible. And then you said constraint specialized talent, I think is currently hard to find. It's very hard to find certain types of skills. And that was, again, one of the other goals of being able to have all these resources in one platform so that people can find the different skills that they would like to utilize rather than trying to hire someone full time. Steve, can you give me the rest of the question too? I think I missed a couple of the items on there.
It was hiring timelines, budget funding, lack of specialized expertise, and compliance.
Compliance, yes. So I think one of the other things that compliance is challenging, but if you are working the same type of project, you have one central expert, then they know how to navigate the compliance. I think that's always the hardest part for me when I'm navigating new compliance pieces is trying to find where to go. But if you can find an expert who knows how to deal with a particular situation, then they can help you navigate that path a little bit better. So navigation is critical for that. And I think a lot of us miss that sometimes in our own institution. So hopefully we can kind of cross collaborate on that as well.
All right, Sam, were you able to unmute or? If not, I've got one more, Alexis.
Yep.
It is RE Maha. If you wanted to test an intervention, aka around diet or activity quickly, which capability is missing today? Most orgs. Trial design, recruitment ops, data analysis, behavior measurement, and how does your new company fill that gap?
Oh, great question. Okay. So I've done dietary trials and activity trials. So it's Patty actually who's on here. So I love that topic. What is missing? So actually dietary advice was one of the things when we built our last dietary trial, we went on, this was like, again, several years ago, we just completed the trial. We went on Upwork to find a dietitian to help us like develop the protocols because we didn't have the specialized expertise for that at the time. So this is another example of where you can use the specialized expertise to kind of help you develop certain protocols. And if you don't have an institutional platform for wearables or a way to develop those protocols, it's good to have someone who knows that and be able to locate someone. So I think it's, again, just being able to find the expertise that you need for your particular study. And if you're doing it within a company or an institution, you just pull in the expertise you need for that particular part rather than having to hire someone new. Awesome. All right. And thanks, Sam. I'm glad your question was answered. So, Patty, any thoughts on that one?
Yeah, I mean, it's hard, but I was thinking because recruitment is also tough.
That's true.
And there's some protocols that, because of the design, they have to be local, but there's others that could theoretically be a national recruitment. And so having the ability to leverage some resources, especially outside your geographic area, would be
Yeah,
really
we
helpful.
actually met with this group who I think is on our platform. They're called We Health, and they are a patient recruitment organization, and they recruit patients from communities. So they've largely been in the neurology and rare disease groups, but they have a capability to stand up patient groups for recruitment. So that's one. And you guys do the lupus, registry. So there's lots of different opportunities. I think that's a great point. So finding a group that can help with recruitment or identifying patient populations is also helpful.
Yeah. Well, I want to applaud you on your efforts to make us all more efficient and keep us from becoming outdated.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much.
We have a
Robert?
question from, Robert.
Hi, Pat. Hi, Alexis. Robert
Hey.
Sammons. I appreciate one, the invite, Steve and Alexis. I apologize for my tardiness. I had another meeting that I actually thought this was at 2 o'clock, not 1 o'clock. So my sincere apologies.
No worries.
One question, I was actually quite intrigued by your speech, and I really appreciate the time. One thing that kind of caught my eye was I see a great opportunity to connect researchers with research opportunities. And one thing that I noticed is there a connection between national grant and funding from the federal government and researchers within the organization with Research Pathfinder today? Do you have a connection point here where you help researchers go after these grants directly and help them meet the compliance requirements of the federal government, which has its own unique facets?
Yeah, so we don't have a direct connection, but we have some grant writers on the platform. So we have people who have experience writing NIH grants on there. The other thing that, in terms of compliance and stuff, that's a good point. There's a lot of new compliance aspects. I think that at least one of our people knows how to do it. I've had to learn that. So I could be a contractor on that too, for like NIST compliance and all those kinds of things that are now required by some contracts from NIH. But not a direct connection. So that's a great question that we should explore more too.
And perhaps do you see this as a place AI could really help close that gap? Because that's certainly an area where compliance and AI is a tool with Anthropic that could really help you with helping your researchers meet those objectives.
Yeah, that's also a great question. I have spent a lot of time with ChatGPT learning about NIST compliance. So, and like
Yeah.
800, 171 and all those. And so it can help you quite a bit actually to help create your
Absolutely.
checklists and stuff. So that's a great point. So
I'd
they're
love
probably
to chat
also
more
something.
about that.
Yeah, that sounds
Thank
great.
you. Great answer.
Thank you.
I got one more that came in, Alexis.
Okay.
It said you mentioned burnout. Where on your teams are you finding burnout showing up the first? Is it the PIs, the trainees, coordinators, analysts?
I think everybody, but in some degree, or like a little bit of everybody. But I think burnout is somewhat silent, and so it's hard to see in everybody. And so I think one of the things that I will give you an answer, but I'm not sure my answer is totally correct. So the I've trainees, like those people who are right between fellowship or postdoc ending and needing to get a job. It is an insane job market right now for new investigators. It's really hard for them to get a grant. And now the institutions used to allow them to set up shop and start going with a kind of a early startup package with the idea that they would get their grant. Institutions just aren't taking that risk anymore. And so it's a much harder environment for young scientists. And I think that's causing burnout. It's certainly causing incredible amount of emotional fatigue. I think the other place is the staff because they see what's happening and they're not sure how stable their jobs are. So I think that's really hard right now too. And then PIs, I've seen a number of PIs having a really hard time because they can't protect their team and they're not sure what's going to happen or how they're going to keep everybody together. So I think it's a little bit of everybody for different reasons.
Okay, well, that's all the questions that were sent to me. Any other questions, everybody?
Thank you, Alexis.
Thank you. So
Yes.
nice to see you. And nice. Thanks so much for everybody coming on. So have a great rest of the day. And
You
see you
too.
soon.
Yes,
Take
thank
care.
you,
Thank you
guys.
very much.
Good luck.
Thank you. Talk to you soon.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, Sam. Bye.